Welcome once again, my fellow manipulators of digital fate. I'm Richie, this is Capricorn, and today we have something a little bit different. We have spoilers for Edge of Eternity's Alchemy, which I normally don't do. I normally don't touch the Alchemy sets. Those of you who have been following the channel for a while know that I sort of loathe Alchemy. If you agree with me and you hate Alchemy, comment below and let me know. But I know there are plenty of people out there that actually love Alchemy, so I wanted to try something new with this, and for once I wanted to cover all of the spoilers for the brand new Alchemy set, and so that's what we're going to do here. Now, I don't play a lot of Alchemy. I tend to think that Alchemy is taking my Magic the Gathering game and kind of Hearthstonifying it, and the reason I love Arena so much is that it lets me practice physical formats and then gain that experience and then take it to the tabletop. So Alchemy has never really sat right with me, but I'll give it the benefit of the doubt for those of you that, enjoy it and want to know what cards are coming. But like I said, let me know in the comments if you agree with me and how you feel about Alchemy, or maybe I'm crazy and Alchemy is great for the game and you have some insight on that. Let me know in the comments, but we're going to dive right in here and try to get through these cards as quick as we can. First off, we have 𝐼𝔻𝐿 of Adagia, a 2/3 legendary artifact spacecraft for just 1 white mana. It also has Flash, which is nice. When 𝐼𝔻𝐿 enters, return up to 1 target creature you control to its owner's hand. It perpetually gets +1/+1. And then it also has the station ability, and when it stations up to 8+ charge counters, it becomes a flying 2/3 creature with whenever 𝐼𝔻𝐿 deals combat damage to a player, you may put a creature card with mana value 3 or less from your hand onto the battlefield. This card is so pushed, and I think that's generally my issue with Alchemy, just in general, is the fact that every card is just so pushed. The average Alchemy card is so much more powerful than the average standard card, and it tends to make the format very biased and tilted towards having to have the Alchemy cards, with all of the standard legal cards just feeling like they're kind of like the little sprinkling on top, and it just never really sat right with me. But this thing's pretty crazy. A 1 mana artifact that's going to flash in and act kind of like a nurturing pixie, pick up any creature. It is worth noting it can only grab a creature, it can't grab like an enchantment or an artifact, so it's not strictly a better nurturing pixie, but still pretty good. It can only hit your own stuff, just like nurturing pixie, but it also gives it, +1/+1. You have a 1 mana artifact on the battlefield that you can like sacrifice to things, or that you can bounce, or whatever, and then potentially some more gas later on in the game if you manage to get this thing stationed up to 8+. Just kind of a crazy card. Next up, we've got Squadron Carrier, a 4/4 spacecraft for 1 white and 2. Stations up to 10+ charge counters to become a 4/4 that have creatures you control have flying. Sorry, that has creatures that you control have flying. So once you get it stationed up to 10 charge counters, it is a 4/4 flyer. It gives itself that flying ability, and it gives everything that you control flying. Pretty good, but 10 charge counters is a lot. In the meantime, spacecraft you control have Exhaust for 1 white mana, conjure a card named Starfighter Pilot onto the battlefield. That's actually really good. Every single spacecraft comes with just a 1 mana Starfighter Pilot, which I believe is the 2/2 common that when it becomes tapped lets you surveil one. Correct me if I'm wrong. Just free value on all your spacecraft. Obviously this thing wants to be in a spacecraft heavy deck, but even just playing a bunch of spacecrafts, exhausting them all, and getting a bunch of Starfighter Pilots, and then eventually giving all the Starfighter Pilots flying by getting this thing stationed up is pretty sweet. Pretty good for an uncommon. Next up, we have Stoic Star Captain, a 2/3 human pilot for 1 white and 1. Each creature you control accrues vehicles and stations permanents as though its power were 1 greater, and it exhausts for 1 white and 1 to seek a spacecraft card. It's just sheer value. A 2/3 body for 2 that also gives you this static ability of making your thing station and crew better, while also giving you some card advantage later on where you can spend the mana and seek a spacecraft, which doesn't even pull something out of your deck. It basically copies it. Alchemy mechanics. Pretty crazy. Just tons of value. I mean, next to other Alchemy cards, I don't know how busto this is, but compared to a normal standard legal card, this card is pretty wild. Next up, we've got Thought Partition, which is basically a white Thoughtseize. I think this card is like a Trojan horse, a backdoor test for them to see if they can do something like this in white. This is 1 mana sorcery, 1 white. Target opponent reveals all non-land cards in their hand. You may choose one of those cards. If you do, it perpetually becomes white, and its mana cost perpetually becomes 5. So the reason this is Alchemy and you can't do this in a normal set is your opponent has to only reveal the non-land cards, so they don't have to reveal the cards in their hand that are lands. Excuse me. When you're playing physically, you can't do that. That requires an honor system that just doesn't fit neatly into the rules of Magic. But digitally, the client can make sure that you're not cheating and that you're only showing your non-lands and you're only holding back your lands. But it's still an interesting way of testing a sort of white discard spell. You make anything in their hand just cost 5 colorless to play. That really messes up curves and tempo for a lot of decks when you hit the thing that they want to play next. Regardless of the fact that you get around color restrictions, right? 5 colorless could end up being good sometimes, maybe slightly in some ways, by letting you avoid a color that you're mana screwed on or whatever the case may be. But more often than not, this is just going to be a benefit, especially because you may choose one of those cards. You don't even have to do it. So if you see their hand and everything in their hand costs like 6 or 7, you don't have to make it cost 5 colorless. It's only gonna hit like the smaller things that they're curving out with, or a cheap piece of removal that you want them to commit their whole turn to play later on in the game. Everything about this card is really awesome, but what do you expect? It's Alchemy. Next up, we've got Cloudsculpt Armorer, a 3/3 Jellyfish Artificer for 1 blue and 3. When it enters, you put a shield counter on target artifact or creature, and whenever 1 or more counters are removed from a permanent you control, you seek a non-land card. That's absolutely insane. Every single time a counter, any counter, gets removed from any permanent that you control, even a land, you get to seek a non-land card. This is just pure and utter value. And even if they kill the Cloudsculpt Armorer, you still have a shield counter left behind. Again, I don't know how busto this is compared to other Alchemy cards, but definitely a lot of value when compared to standard legal cards. Yeah, this wants to be in a Counters Matters deck for sure. Next up, we've got Hydroponics Architect, a 1/2 insect for 1 blue with flying. Whenever it attacks, a random land card in your library perpetually becomes a basic island in addition to its other types, and gains when this land enters, draws a card. So every time you swing with this little 1/2 flying 1-drop, which, why did it even have to be a 1/2? Like, the ability is crazy enough, especially for an uncommon. It could have just been a 1/1 flyer and been fine, but no, they're going to make it a 1/2 because it's Alchemy. Let's push it, right? Whenever this creature attacks, you just turn one of your lands into a cantrip. Granted, it's one random one in your deck, so who knows if you're actually, you'll actually draw one or whatever. But the more you swing with this, the more lands you get to turn into that, the more you increase your chances of getting one and playing one. And the fact that it also becomes a basic island is kind of interesting. I guess that could matter for like Domain, or in older formats, potentially like Island Walk or something like that. Just a pretty interesting card. Next up, we've got Machinist's Dismissal, an instant for 1 blue and 4. It costs 1 less to cast for each artifact you control and each artifact card in your hand, and you counter a non-creature spell. So obviously, if you're in a straight up full artifact deck where almost everything in the deck is artifacts, this is going to just be a 1 mana counterspell. As long as at least 4 of the cards you have drawn at some point throughout the game are artifacts, this thing gets the full cost reduction, because it doesn't matter if they're still in your hand or if you've already played them out and they're on the battlefield, or some combination of both. You just need 4 artifacts. You could have 2 left in your hand and 2 that you already played, mana rocks, whatever. I think this card gets a little worse with artifact creatures because there's a better chance that the artifacts you play out get removed and then don't, you know, contribute their cost reduction to this card. But all in all, if you're just really deep into artifacts, this is just insane. Just a 1 mana counterspell. I guess it is just for a non-creature, but even then, it's still super powerful for 1 mana. Next up, we've got Network Marauder, a 1/2 artifact creature robot pirate for 1 blue and 2. When this creature enters, and whenever another artifact you control with mana value 3 or greater enters, all artifact creature cards and spacecraft cards you own perpetually get +1/+0, and it warps for 2. This card just is begging to be in a deck with 𝐼𝔻𝔻𝔼 Synthesizer. It's just begging to break it. Not only is it a 3-drop that will trigger the Synthesizer, you can warp it in for 2 mana, and it still counts as a 3-drop, so you can trigger the Synthesizer as well. So like, say you have 5 mana available, warping this in and playing another 3-drop artifact means you get to trigger the Synthesizer twice in the same turn with just 5 mana, and then you still get to play this from exile later for 3 and trigger the Synthesizer all over again. But then it gets even crazier, because whenever another artifact you control with mana value 3 or greater enters, all artifact creature cards and spacecrafts get perpetually get +1/+0. So once this is on the battlefield, not only are you generating crazy huge tokens that scale every time you play a 3-drop artifact, but all of those tokens are getting extra buffs to their power. Not to mention, if some of the actual artifacts you're playing happen to be spacecraft or creatures, they're getting the buffs as well. It even counts itself. It will give itself buffs every time something comes into play. So this just seems like kind of insane to use with 𝐼𝔻𝔻𝔼 Synthesizer, and that's entirely its purpose. That card's already busted. I think that deck's probably going to be a problem in Alchemy. Next up, we've got Cantor of the Refrain, a 2/1 human pilot for 1 black mana. It can't block, and when you cast a spell for its warp cost, you return this card from your graveyard to the battlefield under its owner's control, and it perpetually gets +1/+0. This thing is just, it's like that other warp guy that comes in from the graveyard just turned up to 11. It's like that guy on crack. Like, not only can it just keep coming back, it comes back stronger every time. You gotta remember, that perpetually +1/+0 sticks around. So if this thing dies and then eventually comes back, it comes back as a 3/1. But if it dies again and then somehow comes back again, it comes back as a 4/1. And then a 5/1, and then a 6/1. It just keeps coming back stronger and stronger, and it only ever costs you 1 mana. Just absolutely nuts. And all you have to do is just warp a spell. Just literally just play a warped card for its warp cost, and this comes back. You don't have to pay any extra mana. You don't have to jump through any other hoops. You just jam this in a warp deck, and you go to town. This card's just crazy. All of these cards are crazy. Welcome to Alchemy. Next up, we've got Voidal Devote, a 3/3 human soldier with haste for 2 black and 1. It warps for 1 black and 1, and whenever this creature attacks, conjure a card named Cantor of the Refrain into your graveyard. I don't know exactly what Cantor of the Refrain does. If you guys know what that card does, let me know in the comments. But either way, just getting value that you can trigger literally the turn it comes into play because of the haste, whether or not you're warping it or hard casting it, just seems kind of nuts. You warp it in for 2, swing for 3, grab a Cantor, put it in your graveyard. Then next turn you hard cast this for 3, swing for 3 again, find another Cantor, put it in your graveyard. You've got 2 Cantors in the graveyard at the end of turn 3 and have swung for 6 mana. That just seems like a lot of value. Granted, I don't know what Cantor of the Refrain does, so please let me know in the comments. But no matter what it does, it has to get you some kind of value from the graveyard, right? So just getting that repeat value with this guy, and then potentially still swinging every turn and getting even more of them into your graveyard, just seems nuts to me. And it's Conjure. That's another thing you gotta keep in mind, is it's Conjure, so it's not like you're gonna hit 4 Cantors in the graveyard and run out. Like, you could just keep doing it and keep doing it and keep doing it, and eventually have 10 Cantors in the graveyard, which, who knows how busted that is? You guys probably do. Like I know, like I said, let me know in the comments what that card does. But no matter what, it's got to get you some value, and it seems pretty cracked. Next up, we've got Song of Point Prime, a sorcery for 1 black and 1. Each opponent sacrifices a creature of their choice. Conjure a card named Cantor of the Refrain into your graveyard. So another card that does that. This is literally just an edict that also puts a Cantor into your graveyard. Obviously, those 2 cards are supposed to be used together, and now I'm even more curious about what the hell that card does. So please, let me know. Please, God. Next up, we've got Gravitic Herald, a 2/4 human soldier with lifelink for 1 black and 3. When this creature enters, seek a non-land permanent card with mana value 3 or less. That card gains Warp 0 until end of turn, and then you lose 2 life. So you get a random permanent 3-drop or less seeked from your deck that you can play for free. Granted, it only lasts until end of turn, and then it gets exiled. I think what's really interesting about this card is it brings warp to permanent types that didn't previously have it. So before we had creatures, and then, you know, I think, actually, didn't we only have creatures? I think we only had creatures with warp. This will let you warp in anything. Enchantments, battles even. Although I don't think battles are alchemy legal, but still, in older formats, you could do that. Honestly, seems kind of crazy. You could warp in a planeswalker if you wanted to, you know, and just use its ultimate right away. Or, like, its big ability, whatever that might be. The thing that might, like, kill it because it takes enough loyalty off. Because it's going to go away anyway, and maybe you won't be able to cast it from exile if you do that, but, like, maybe it's too expensive that you're never going to cast it really from exile anyway. I don't know. There's probably a whole bunch of ways to use this. Again, seems a little bit busted. Next up, we've got Monoist Gravliner, a 2/3 artifact spacecraft for 1 black and 1. It stations up to 6+ charge counters in order to become essentially a Vampire Nighthawk, a 2/3 flying Death Touch lifelinker. But in the meantime, whenever a creature stations this spacecraft, that creature perpetually gains Death Touch and lifelink. That's actually kind of nuts. Perpetually. You could have all your dudes station this and get Death Touch and lifelink. It's like a Death Touch and lifelink anthem. Granted, it means you have to tap that creature once and can't use it to attack or block, but if it's the turn they're coming into play, if you already have the Gravliner out, you slam a creature that's, you know, in an aggressive deck where you're not going to really want to block with it anyway, but you can't attack with it yet because of summoning sickness, just station this thing up. And when you get it to 6, it can swing in with lifelink and gain some of the life back that maybe makes up for the damage you're taking for the tempo loss to get this thing stationed up. But even after this thing becomes a creature, just for the rest of the game, whenever you want, you can just tap a creature to give it Death Touch and lifelink forever. And remember, perpetually is literally forever, so even if they kill that creature, it goes to the graveyard and use a reanimation spell to bring it back, it's going to come back with Death Touch and lifelink. Yeah, Alchemy is busted. Next up, we've got Cosmic Sovereign. We're on to red. A 3/4 dragon with flying and haste for 2 red and 3. This doesn't seem busted enough for Alchemy. What else does it do? Pay 1 red mana. This creature gets +1/+0 until end of turn. At the beginning of combat on your turn, conjure a random creature card with mana value X onto the battlefield, where X is this creature's power. That creature gains haste. Exile it at the beginning of the next end step. So that's a static ability. The buff is separate. Okay, when I was first reading this, I thought that ability was part of the buff. Like, every time you spent 1 red mana, it buffed you 1 power and did this ability. Really weird templating for the text, because it kind of looks like that a little bit. Although I guess there's enough of a space at the end of turn and the period that they could have fit the @ but it's a little hard to notice. Either way, every single combat, you just make a dude. You just make a dude with haste that's got, what, mana value equal to this thing's power. So you do have to commit to pumping this thing up prior to combat in order to get that trigger to be better. But that's not really that big of a downside. Like, you could pump it up just high enough to get whatever creature you want, and then still pump it more in combat, like, as a trick. This just does everything. The fact that it also has haste is nuts. It is pretty expensive, so I'm going to go out on a limb and say this is, like, one of the least busted cards we've seen, at least as far as rares and mythics. Only because it does take a heck of a lot of mana to get going right off the bat. You get it out for just the 5, it's just a 3/4 flying haste, and sure, it swings in for 3, and maybe makes a 3 power thing once, but then your opponent removes it. Or it makes a 3 casting cost thing, right? Because it'll be 3 power. Obviously, it gets really, really good if this thing survives a turn cycle, and you can put whatever mana you want into it, and just exponentially increase the value you're getting out of that static ability. But it just seems, I don't know, it seems a little expensive. I'm surprised. It's still definitely busto. Like the ceiling of this card is nuts. And the potential for this thing to go completely off the rails is absolutely there, just like every Alchemy card. But unlike most of the Alchemy cards, this is a little bit expensive and requires you to kind of jump through some hoops to actually get all the value you want out of it. So, I don't know. That's my opinion. Next up, we've got Cavern Consumed, a sorcery for 2 red and 3. You may put an artifact or creature card from your hand onto the battlefield. It perpetually becomes an artifact creature with base power and toughness 4/4 and gains haste. Sacrifice it at the beginning of the next unstep. End step. Unstep? End step. Untap. Clearly I need more coffee. Put an artifact or creature. What a weird card. It's 5 mana. You only get to do it once. It's only a 4/4, and it gets sacrificed. The few things that might make it powerful enough, and I can't exactly think of how yet, but the fact that it perpetually becomes an artifact creature, that's a 4/4, could matter. You could maybe blink it. You could maybe bring it back from the graveyard later, and it would retain some of that value. You can turn artifacts into artifact creatures, but more importantly, you could potentially use this to put like a smaller creature out that's like a 1/1 and have it still become an artifact creature that's a 4/4. And I don't know when it would be worth it to do that with something that's 5 mana. But maybe if there's some like really crazy statted card that's expensive that just doesn't have a big power and toughness because its power lies in like the abilities it has, maybe it's worth putting that onto the field and turning into a 4/4 and getting more out of that 4/4 because maybe that thing has like double strike and whatever, right? So maybe it's cool there, but you still have to sacrifice it. So at the end of the day, whatever value is going to actually come out of this card definitely needs to come out of getting value off the perpetually part of the card. Being able to flicker the thing, being able to bring it back from the graveyard, or maybe having something that you want to die because something crazy happens when it dies. I'm not really sure exactly what cards want to be paired with this. It's obvious to me that they have something in mind, something very specific in mind to pair this with that's probably going to be busted in Alchemy, but I can't think of what that is off the top of my head, so if you know, let me know in the comments. Next up, we've got Mind Security, a 3/1 Kavu soldier with trample for 1 red and 1, which is already really good. Alchemy, you're so busted. When this creature enters, conjure a card named Flametongue Kavu into the top 8 cards of your library at random. It perpetually gains, you may pay 0 rather than pay this spell's mana cost. What is happening? What is happening to Magic? This is crazy. It's a 2-drop that's probably better than most of Magic's 2-drops just to begin with. A 3/1 trample. Just a 3/1 trample 10 years ago, people would have thought is a pretty good card for 2 mana. Not like insane, but for an uncommon, absolutely. The fact that you get a free Flametongue Kavu is just nuts. Like, sure, you don't know when you're going to draw it, but eventually you draw it, and you just get a free 4/2 that kills something. For no mana. And you get to still, like, use all of your mana that turn to do everything else you would have done as well. That's just insane. This card's insane. Imagine this in, like, a flicker deck, too. Especially with something that, like, flickers every turn, like Y'shtola Rule or something like that. Like, oh my god. You put this onto the battlefield with a Y'shtola Rule out, you've got 3 free Flametongue Kavus in the top 8 of your deck. And then you get another 2 every turn. That is wild. Granted, you need to draw cards, because you want to be playing other things to take advantage of the fact that they cost 0. So you wouldn't want all of the cards in the top 8 to be free Flametongue Kavus. But yeah, there's still potential for this to be absolutely nuts. Next up, we've got Fendar the Overminer, a 4/4 legendary Kavu pirate with menace for 2 red and 2. Whenever a non-basic land is put into a graveyard from the battlefield, its controller conjures a card named Wastes onto the battlefield tapped. At the beginning of your end step, if you control 2 or more tapped creatures, destroy up to 1 target non-basic land. So you eventually destroy all their lands. And they don't get to search their land for a basic to replace it. They only get a Wastes. And the Waste is tapped. So they get hit with tempo because, well, I guess they don't get hit with tempo, right? Because it enters tapped, at your end step. So they would just untap it immediately. But still, every single turn you get to convert one of their lands into a colorless land. Every single turn, as long as you have 2 or more tapped creatures. But obviously that's not going to be too much of a hoop to jump through. This eventually just makes them run out of mana. This is just like, is there going to be a land destruction deck in Alchemy? We've already got a couple cards that are like kind of trying to make land destruction exist, and they're nowhere near enough to get the job done right now. But something like this could potentially open the door to land destruction being viable in Alchemy at least. I don't know, because I don't play Alchemy, but it seems busted. Next up, we've got Brood Astronomer, a 2/2 insect scientist for 1 green and 1. When this creature enters, you can sacrifice a land. If you do, draft a card from the planet's spellbook and put it onto the battlefield tapped. I'm going to assume the planet's spellbook is just one of each of the 5 planets that exist in the Edge of Eternity's expansion. I'm almost positive there aren't new planets coming in this Alchemy set, and there definitely aren't other planets that already exist in Magic. That was a new thing. That was a new thing introduced in Edge of Eternities. So I'm going to go out on a limb and say it's those 5 cards. We'll know for sure by the time we get to the end of these spoilers that, you know, if there are or aren't more planets. But you can also tap this guy to add 1 mana of any color. If you control a planet with 12 or more charge counters on it, add 3 mana of any one color instead. Okay, now they're really trying to push the planets, right? Sacrifice a land to grab a planet. This is pretty cool too, like if you manage to drop it later when you don't have a land to play that turn, you can sacrifice one of your tapped lands that you used to play this to fetch the planet and then just play the planet. So it's not like it feels like you're going down on lands at all. It doesn't feel like a tempo loss. But even early in the game, like getting this out on 2, maybe you don't even fetch a planet, but you eventually, you know, you're playing this with planets and eventually it's a Black Lotus every turn. Yeah, Alchemy is busted. Next up, we've got 𝔼𝑗𝐼𝑑 Lifeseed, an artifact for 1 green mana. When it enters, you draft a card from 𝔼𝑗𝐼𝑑 Lifeseed's spellbook. Unfortunately, I don't know the spellbooks right now, so we're going to have to theorize on that. Of course, if you guys know any of the cards that are in the spellbook and you want to update me in the comments, definitely let me know. But you can also tap this to add 1 mana of any color. Spend this mana only to activate abilities of land sources. So I'm going to assume, based on the way Alchemy cards have been in the past, that all of the cards in 𝔼𝑗𝐼𝑑 Lifeseed's spellbook are probably going to be lands that have activated abilities. In fact, I would go one step further and guess that they're probably all of the lands that came in the bonus sheet for Edge of Eternities. All of those different, mostly colorless lands that have all those weird activated abilities, that's probably what it is. So you play this, you probably get one of those, and then eventually you can use this to generate mana to activate the ability on that thing that you drafted, and potentially other things that you're drawing into and playing as well. Kind of interesting. Again, I feel like this card, they have a very specific deck in mind that they want people to build with this. And outside of that deck, will it be any good? Hard to say. Next up, we've got Worldw Weave, an enchantment for 1 green and 2. Whenever you cast a creature spell, you seek a land card and put it onto the battlefield tapped. Okay. So it turns all of your creatures into a poor man's version of the Green Overlord. Basically. Seek a land, put it on the battlefield tapped every time a creature enters. Well, every time you cast a creature spell. Still. Crazy? How good is it really? How good is it really? How good is it really? The land comes in tapped. Hard to say. You do have to take a tempo hit, right, to play this out. Although Llanowar Elves on 1, this on turn 2, just get it out of the way, and then just start going ham. Seems kind of good. I guess it's even better, I guess, right, if you have really, really cheap creatures. Like turn 4, you play your 3rd land, you've got your Llanowar Elf first, you play 4 1-drops, and you ramp 4 spells. And if all those 1-drops have like landfall abilities, like the Chocobo Chick and stuff like that, that could get really, really crazy. I see where this could go. You do have to take a tempo hit to get it down. And they definitely have a specific deck in mind for this card for sure. The potential is absolutely there. Next up, we've got Mutable Pupa, a 1/1 insect with Evolve for 1 green mana. Whenever another creature you control enters, this creature perpetually gains flying if that creature has flying. The same is true for just about every single keyword ability. Interesting. So it's a 1/1 everything. You get it out on turn 1. It gets everything. That's interesting. How good is it really? How good is it really? Let me know in the comments. Next up, we've got our first multicolor card, Ambassador of Ivendo, a 1/3 insect advisor for 2 mana in the colors of Simic. It has a landfall ability. Whenever a land you control enters, a random land card in your library perpetually gains. Whenever this land becomes tapped, draw a card. Okay, we already saw that guy that turns lands into also islands, and when you play them, draw a card. Now we have a guy that whenever you landfall, a random land gains the ability to, whenever it's tapped, draw a card. Are you just turning your entire deck into just a card drawing machine when it comes to ramp decks? Is that what they want you to do? It seems like that's what they want you to do. Landfall card advantage. Every single time you drop a land, a random land gets its wings. This card's busted. Next up, we've got Aq'savir Fate Thief, a 4/3 legendary Drix pirate for 4 mana in the colors of Rakdos. It warps out for just 1 hybrid mana, and it has a Void ability. At the beginning of your end step, if a non-land permanent left the battlefield this turn or a spell was warped, you discard a card and then heist target opponent's library. Great. You got a discard outlet that's meshing heist with warp on a creature with a pretty decent power and toughness. Thanks, I hate it. Next up, we've got Prototype X8, an 8/8 legendary artifact creature robot octopus for a whopping 8 mana in the colors of Dimir. It costs 1 less to cast for each creature card in your graveyard. And whenever another creature you control enters, if you cast it, you sacrifice it and conjure a duplicate of it onto the battlefield. The duplicate perpetually becomes a robot artifact in addition to its other types. So you're assimilating them like the board, or like the Borg X8. The board. God, I need more coffee. This is actually really cool. I'm curious how the timing works. If you have that 3 black mana enchantment out that makes you sacrifice creatures when you play them and gives you a 2/2 zombie, do you get the value off Prototype X8 and that card? I don't know. But it's interesting, just filling up your graveyard and still getting the creature that you played, getting the best of both worlds, so that, you know, potentially another copy of this down the line costs even less because you have all those creatures in your graveyard. It's also pretty good with a reanimation deck, because you're getting creatures out while putting them into the graveyard at the exact same time, and then using your reanimation spells to then get the original versions from the graveyard while still having the copy versions in play. Could be pretty nuts. I wonder if there's any timing between when you have to sacrifice it. I wonder if you could play another creature with this out and respond to sacrificing it by blinking the creature. Although I guess that doesn't matter because it triggers whenever a creature enters, not whenever a creature was cast. That's really interesting. That means it'll work even for creature tokens. The token won't still be in your graveyard, but technically... Oh wait, no, because it's if you cast it. It is if you cast it. So tokens won't count. This is really interesting. I'm trying to think of how to break this card, what ways you use to break this card, and I'm not 100% certain. I guess it could be really good in like an aristocrat style deck, right? Because if you're graveyard gets filled up really quick with a bunch of cheap creatures because you're doing the normal aristocrats thing, you just jam this out for 2 mana. And then you keep doing the normal aristocrats thing, except you get automatic sacrifice triggers every time you play a creature without actually losing the creature because you get a token to replace it. That could actually be a really interesting deck to try to build. See, this design space has me tempted to dive into Alchemy. I kind of fucking hate Alchemy though, so I don't think I'm going to. But still, every now and then you get a gem in Alchemy that you kind of just wish they did something similar in the standard set because there's some interesting design space to explore. But man, Alchemy's so pushed and so busted and so hard to play without feeling like I'm forced to spend a bunch of wild cards on all these busted broken Alchemy cards, and it never sits right with me. But this is interesting. Next up, we've got Sliver Weftwinder, a 6/6 legendary Sliver for 5 mana, a full WUBERG here. Sliver cards in your hand have Warp 3. Sliver creatures you control have, when this creature enters, conjure a random card from the Sliver's spellbook into the top 10 cards of your library at random, and then draw a card. Interesting. It also warps for 3. So this is only going to be really good, at least in Alchemy, not in older sets, but in Alchemy, where you only have access to also standard legal cards, this is good with the Thrumming Hivestone, but it works in a weird way, because, like, at first, it feels like you're not ever going to have actual Sliver cards in your hand, right? So you don't really get that Warp 3 value, but if you get a Thrumming Hivestone out with the Sliver Weftwinder, as it creates those Sliver tokens, it doesn't say cast. So as you create those Sliver tokens, you get to conjure. So if you do have the Thrumming Hivestone out, you get 2 conjures at the beginning of your turn when it triggers, and you get 2 Slivers into the top 10 cards of your library, and you'll draw 2 cards, which is a lot of value, And then as you start to get Slivers into your library from the spellbook, you eventually draw into them, and then the ones you draw into have the Warp 3, that potentially lets you use them in very interesting ways. At the very least, you can use the Warp to get multiple cast triggers off of every Sliver to get more value off the Sliver Weftwinder. And because the Thrumming Hivestone gives haste, you can get even more value off warping the Slivers in because they can still swing that turn. So there is a lot of value to be had here. You could even just warp this out. Warping it out doesn't do a lot with Thrumming Hivestone, right? Because it's not around during your upkeep to give its abilities to the tokens that the Hivestone makes if you warp it out. Really interesting. Really, really interesting card. Obviously, it gets way better if they decide to actually bring Slivers back to standard. Fingers crossed. I do think it's worth exploring in Alchemy for those of you that like Alchemy, trying to use this with, use this with the Thrumming Hivestone, and maybe this actually makes it useful enough to try and make the whole ley line of transformation deck naming Slivers so that all of your creatures become Slivers. Maybe this is enough alongside the Thrumming Hivestone to actually make that deck worth trying. Hard to say. My dog is apparently upset about the Slivers because I can hear him yapping in the background. But let's move on. Next up, we've got Val Maroon Surveyor, a 2/3 legendary human scout with vigilance for 2 mana in the colors of Naya. So 1 red and 1 𝐼𝔻𝔼 hybrid mana. Man, they really push the boundaries in these Alchemy sets, huh? 2/3 vigilance for 2. Whenever you discover, investigate, scry, surveil, or seek 1 or more cards, Val deals 1 damage to each opponent and you gain 1 life. This is just like... Is Magic running out of design space? Let's just throw everything at the wall and see what sticks, I guess. Alchemy's busted. Next up, we've got Volatile Orbit, an enchantment for 2 mana in the colors of Gruul. When this enchantment enters, if you control a planet, this enchantment deals 4 damage to any target. Sure, cool. It's 2 mana, 4 damage removal spell that you could potentially bounce with like a Pixie and replay. All you gotta do is have a planet. You can also pay 3 mana, sack it, conjure a card of your choice from the planet spellbook onto the battlefield tapped with 8 charge counters on it. Activate only as a sorcery. Well, this makes planet decks way more usable, right? You only need to really get the tempo loss of putting 1 out initially, and the rest of your land drops can just be normal untapped land so that you don't get too far behind on tempo, and that turns on this being a really good, efficient, on-curve removal spell, and later on you just pay 3, and you get a planet that's only 4 charge counters away from turning on. Yeah, thanks, it's busted. Next up, we've got Viveza, Orbital Overseer, a 4/4 legendary jellyfish advisor with flying and vigilance for 4 mana in the colors of Bant. That was a mouthful. All of these cards are a mouthful. Wizards is running out of design space. When Viveza enters, conjure a card of your choice from the planet spellbook onto the battlefield. Whenever you attack, create a lander token. It becomes a 2/1 artifact creature and gains flying. Why does this card just do everything? Like, literally everything. For 4 mana, you get a 4/4 flyer. Cool. It also has vigilance, so it's swinging and blocking. Cool. It also gives you a free planet. Cool. And that free planet comes onto the battlefield for free and doesn't count as your land drop. Cool. Oh yeah, by the way, when you attack, you get a lander. Oh yeah, and also that lander's not just a lander. It's a 2/1 flyer. Like, why does this have to do everything? Why does this have to do everything? Why does it have to do everything? Alchemy's busted. Next up, we've got Drix Interlacer. This is our first colorless artifact of the day, and I think our second to last card. This is just 1 mana for an artifact, starting intensity of 0. Whenever another artifact you control enters, it intensifies by 1, so definitely wants to be in an artifact deck. Tap this, sack it, you don't have to spend any mana or anything. Draw X cards where X is half this artifact's intensity rounded down. Activate only as a sorcery. So you just play this on 1, you drop every artifact under the sun as you're curving out, and then when you're out of gas and you have no things left to drop, you sack it and draw a whole new hand. Thanks. Alchemy's busted. Next up, we have our last card of the day. This is Spirited Simulacrum, a 2/1 artifact creature robot for 4 colorless mana. It warps out for 4 colorless mana. When it enters, seek a land card and put it onto the battlefield tapped. When it leaves the battlefield, seek a non-land card. So it's literally just a better Solemn Simulacrum. It's literally just a strictly better. The only thing that is worse about it is it's a 2/1 instead of a 2/2, which you literally don't care about because you want it to die. Right? You warp it out. If your opponent doesn't kill it, you still get it to leave and give you the value. And then you get to play it again, and you get double the value than you would off of a Simulacrum Synthesizer. This is just... Power creep is so insane. Like, what world are we living in? Power creep is a hell of a drug. Not only that, you don't just draw a card when it leaves, right? You seek a non-land card. Which means the cards are still in your deck, I believe. Or is that Conjure? I think that might be Conjure. Either way, it's strictly better than drawing a card because you make sure you don't draw a land. You're never drawing like a dead land or anything. You're always drawing a piece of gas off this, and you get to do it twice rather than once with Solemn Simulacrum. For the same cost each time. Oh, it seeks a land as well. This card's nuts. This card's so crazy. What is Wizards doing to Magic? What is going on? Is Alchemy busted? Or is it just me? I can't stand it. I cannot stand how power crept Alchemy is. It makes the game feel so much less like a game. I don't know. Am I the only one? Let me know in the comments if you think Alchemy is fine, or if you agree with me and you think Alchemy is just pushed. And, I don't know. It drives me crazy. I can't believe how... Power creep is a hell of a drug. But thank you for checking out the video. Please like the video so it helps me get it out to more people and helps the channel grow. And be sure to subscribe. I'll have a ton more spoiler videos on the way. We still got some Spider-Man cards to go over. We've still got the Jumpstart cards, the bundle box cards for Avatar. That's like a second Avatar spoiler batch that we need to go over. And yeah, just a lot of stuff that we got coming. Bunch of deck techs on the way. If you happen to see this the day it goes live, I'm going to be doing the Arena Open as well, trying my hand at sealed and seeing if we can make it into day 2. So come on over to Twitch and be a part of that. That's twitch.tv/quarantinecapricorn, because if I'm alive and I'm breathing, I'm there and I'm streaming. One last thing. If you're in the Northeast, in like the southern New Hampshire or northern Massachusetts area, every Sunday from now on at 12 noon, I am going to be doing a Learn to Play event for Wonders of the First, the brand new card game that I'm kind of obsessed with right now. It's the only card game I've ever played that I've liked more than Magic, which is kind of crazy, because I never thought I'd find a game that I liked more than Magic, to the point where I never even bothered to try a lot of other games, because every time I do, they just end up being a worse version of Magic, and I come back to Magic. But this game's the real deal. If you want to learn how to play for free and hang out with me, that's happening at Merrimack Games in Merrimack, New Hampshire, every single Sunday at 12 p.m. Even the dog's excited about it. So come hang out with me. I'll see you there. Thanks so much for checking out my channel. I'd like to give a huge shout out to all of my patrons over at Patreon. Without you guys, this channel would not be possible, so honestly, thank you from the bottom of my heart for all of your contributions. If you haven't yet, like and subscribe. The more likes we get and the quicker we get them, the bigger this channel will grow and the faster it will grow. I'd love nothing more than this channel to become something very special for you guys, but it's entirely up to you how fast that happens. Also, if you'd like more deck techs, that's somewhere over there. And if you'd like to see what else the channel's been up to lately, that's somewhere up that way. Also, subscribe, circle below, do all the things.